you're going to feel overwhelmed and it's really difficult. If you're on the way to get a diagnosis, there's so many hoops and hurdles and paperwork and all these things you need to do. And then if you get a diagnosis, you have to go to all these different therapies. And it can just seem so daunting. I believe that you are the mom for this child and you've got this. You've totally got it.
Hi there, Soulful Mama. Welcome to the Soul Care Mom podcast. I'm Catherine Wilde of soulcaremom.com. I'm a mom of 3 amazing kids, a soul care mom coach, and a yoga and meditation teacher. I've helped hundreds of women, and I'm here to help you feel calm and find your unshakable confidence as a mom. If you're ready to stop living in survival mode and you're ready to drop the mom guilt and overwhelm, this podcast is for you. Think of this as a lunch date with a girlfriend. Grab a cup of tea and get cozy. It's time to get honest and vulnerable and shift the traditional mindset around motherhood. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Get ready to grow and feel empowered as a mom. I'm here for you, Mama. Let's get started. Does mom life look different than you originally envisioned? Life often hands us challenges as parents that leave us feeling lost or overwhelmed. Today, my guest on the Soul Care Mom podcast is Shannon Earley. She's a homeschooling mom of 4, 2 of which are on the autism spectrum, and she has another child with a rare genetic disorder. She shares her journey as a special needs mom, the struggles of being a special needs parent, and tips on homeschooling a special needs child. Whether or not you are a mom of a special needs child, you are not going to want to miss this episode. The tips shared in this conversation will help you to navigate your journey with more ease.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, I'm so glad that you're having me on. Thank you.
Hey, I am so excited to talk with you about all things motherhood, homeschooling, and I'm also really looking forward to hearing your experience as a mom with multiple special needs children. Could you start by sharing a little bit about that and your journey?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my husband and I, we always knew we wanted to have a big family. We just knew we wanted to have tons of children. And I found out that I couldn't get pregnant at first. And we were so upset about it. And we decided, okay, there's some reason God wants us to have a big family, but it's obviously not going to be this way. So we'll just adopt like a gajillion children. And as soon as we feel comfortable with that, we ended up getting pregnant. And we were like, what the heck? Like we thought we couldn't get pregnant. And so our first baby, I guess this is sort of I could go on for a while, but anyways, our baby was born out of a lot of difficulty. And when she was 3 weeks old, when you're like a breastfeeding mom, you guys can get in a rhythm with your baby and you kind of know when it's time for the baby to nurse. And I remember thinking, it's been a really long time since she's nursed. I'm going to go check on the baby. And she wasn't breathing. She was a completely different color. She was totally limp. And so I picked her up, and you know that scene from 101 Dalmatians where there's a little puppy that dies and the dad starts rubbing its back really hard? Like all of a sudden, that's what I just started thinking about doing. So I'm like rubbing her back really hard. And later on, the hospital said that she had what is called an acute life-threatening event. And it would have been SIDS if I didn't find her. So with all that as the backstory, right? Didn't know I could have kids. Finally was able to get pregnant, have a baby. She almost dies, all this other stuff. It was like getting on this road of motherhood was insane. It was already crazy, but we were just so thankful that we had a baby that it was like whatever else was going to get thrown at us was going to be okay. We were going to deal with it, if that makes sense. But she does now have high functioning autism. And I think that sometimes I just have so many, I'm going to say there's so many differences about, I know they say autism is a spectrum and all this other, I have so much stuff I could talk to you about. But then we have our second born who also has autism. His name is Finn, and he's a darling, and his autism as a boy looks very different than our daughter's autism as a girl. And And the interesting thing, I think that God kind of worked it out that way, that our kids were so close in age, because when our eldest was 2, we were pregnant with our third, and we didn't know that anybody had autism yet. We just thought, none of the parenting books are working. This is so hard. Like, why is all of our friends' advice not working? Nothing that we're doing is that the doctor says, it's just not helping. Like, what's going on? So by the time we had our third child is when we started getting the diagnoses for the first 2 kids. So yeah, so it was a super long answer to, yeah, now we have 4 kids and half of them have autism.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your journey. I didn't know all of that. And so, like you said, like being a mom, becoming a mom is not an easy job just in itself. But then adding special needs of children into the equation makes it, even more challenging in some ways. So, and we talked about this like just before we hopped on, right? Like, children are this beautiful gift, and of course, like we love them and we, cherish them. But let's talk honestly for a moment about feelings, because although we wouldn't change our children for the world, those big emotions can still come up for us as parents, right? Around special needs diagnoses, and especially you've got multiple of them, so honoring those feelings and allowing yourself to process what's coming up for you, whether you feel sad or upset or even depressed, just knowing that all of your feelings are valid and it's okay to work through them. So can you share your experience about?
Yeah, I think first of all, any mom or dad that's listening, if you have children with special needs, my heart goes out to you, and it is so important that everyone's going to say that you need to take some time for yourself. And I know that we don't get any of it, but it is so important to understand like what you're feeling. Don't be ashamed of the different thoughts that you might have. Try to talk them out with your spouse or your partner or a therapist or something, because we have some really big emotions that we're not really allowed time to process because we're dealing with our children. So first of all, just, that. Secondly, I think that there is a lot of feeling of, yes, we love our children. Of course, we love our kids. And we also feel like we always have to be the fighter for our children, like we're the ones with a sword and we're standing between our kids and whatever the difficulty is, whatever child you have, that's our job as a mom. But when you have kids with special needs, it can be really, really difficult. Just the fact that a lot of your friends, no matter how much they love you, if they don't have a child with special needs, they just can't understand. They don't get it. And they might say things like, she doesn't look like she has autism. Like, don't say that, guy. Like, bless y'all's hearts. Just don't say it, they try to be helpful and they can't do it. But also, like, one of the feelings I feel a lot, and I feel shameful saying it because, like I said, be honest with your feelings. But one of the feelings I feel a lot is actually embarrassment. Like, I can get embarrassed by my kids quite frequently. And I think that my typically functioning kids, yes, they still embarrass me in the store if they like have a tantrum or something like that. But I think that what's different, especially with something like autism, nobody can look at my kids right away and be like, oh, they obviously have something different in their brain. Like, they don't look like that. They just look like a typical human being. And I can feel so embarrassed for things like, for instance, my eldest has this problem where when she's eating food, her senses get overloaded. So if she's in public, it's like she's not able to filter out people talking and the sound of people's feet and the sounds of doors opening. She can't filter that out and figure out what's the most important thing to focus on. And so she gets overstimulated and she'll end up throwing up her food. And she'll do this in public. So she's 10 now and we'll be eating or something, thinking, okay, maybe this time she's got it. And we'll be sitting next to another family like Chick-fil-A or something like that. And then she's like all over the table. And I'm just like, it's so embarrassing. Or when my son, people will be like, hey buddy, how you doing? And he's not going to respond. He just doesn't do, and you want to be like, hey dude, like say hello. Like, so, this super like nice person is saying hi to you, just say hi back, and you just won't do it. So there's certain times where like, I do feel embarrassed, by my kids, which sounds stinky because, I love them to death. But also there's just the feelings of like, it's not fair. I think, it just stinks because there's so much difficulty as being, parents of children with special needs, but there's so much difficulty you see your kids go through too. And it just is heartbreaking when, your kid might say something to you in private, like they might cry and say they have no friends. And then you see them in public and they have like no ability to like get into a group or to talk to people or to make friends. They just don't know how to do it. And so, there's a lot of feeling of like, it's just not fair. It just stinks. It's not fair. And I think, finding out about the diagnosis, for instance, when we were searching for what was going on with our kids, I started getting this inkling of, okay, nothing's working. And my children do these odd behaviors, these like really odd behaviors. And it looks like if you research it, that it's probably autism. And everyone's like, no, it's not autism. Don't, there's no way. And by the way, Mom, if you get like a gut instinct, just go for it. Just go figure it out. But, everyone's like, there's no way it's autism. Your kids are just quirky. They're just really odd, whatever. And, finally we go and we get the diagnosis. And on one hand, I was like, yes, I knew it. I was right. I'm not a bad mom. Like, yes, I knew that none of the parenting books were working. This is why. Woohoo. And on the other hand, you're like, no, this is awful. Like, what is my child's future going to be like? Like, are they going to be able to get married one day if they want to? Are they going to be able to leave the house? It's like, on the other hand, it's just this terrible weight. So I don't know. I think just like being a mom of typical kids, things can go, you can have a great day and a tough day in the same hour with your kids, It's the same way with autism. It just happens to be a lot more, I think, a lot more up and down, a lot more.
Oh, thank you for sharing so authentically. I'm sure that there are moms listening that can so relate and so needed to hear that another mom, is going through this or having those feelings that she maybe doesn't feel like she can talk about. So thank you so much for that. So if there is a mom listening right now and she's in the middle of navigating like a special needs diagnosis, what that means for her family, trying to figure out what she needs to do, and she's just feeling overwhelmed, what would you say to her?
That's a really good question. I think you're going to feel overwhelmed and it's really difficult, but you need to push through. If you're on the way to get a diagnosis, there's so many hoops and hurdles and paperwork and all these things you need to do. And it can seem just insane. And you have to see all these different doctors. And then if you get a diagnosis, you have to go to all these different therapies. And it can just seem so daunting. But I believe that you are the mom for this child, that God put you there to take care of this child. He gave you this child because he knows you're the guy. You're the guy that is going to rock this child's world. And it's going to be up to you. And you've got this. You've totally got it. And so just keep pushing through.
Oh, I love that so much. And something you said, like, there's a reason we get paired up with our kids, and I think, the mom is amazing. Like, she can totally, she's equipped for this and so powerful. And not that it's easy, but with the kids too, I feel like these kids that come into our world that are unique and have these quirks, and it's just, and they're like asking us to see the world in a different way. They're asking us to grow. They're asking us to open our hearts, and just, they're such a gift, and I know that we have this, way that we see the world and the way that things should be and the way that we should act in public and all of these things. And I feel like they're asking us to broaden our horizons, to see the world in a different way. There's so many blessings in all of that, and it can be so hard to navigate. And I really do appreciate you sharing all this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that you're totally right. As far as seeing the world in a different, through their eyes, I think you're 100% right. And you're right that a lot of times the difficulty is when it's like we have a plan and we want things to go the plan this way. And with children in general and with kids with autism, they're like, screw your plan. This is how I'm going to go through the day. But like, okay, my son, for instance, is obsessed with miniature things. And that's really fun. Like we'll be out in public and I'll start noticing like, oh, look at that mini pine cone or whatever, whatever it is. And then my daughter, her like super obsession is babies. So mostly human babies, but like it could be a baby, anything. And she's just decided, like maybe she could be a NICU nurse or something, if she really focuses on school and she could take care of babies all day. When she found out about that, she was like, forget about, like, I'm going to do everything I can to get there one day. So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes. Yeah. And yes, my kids definitely changed the way that I see the world. I can so relate to that. I love that. Okay. So you also homeschool your kids. So I'd love to hear about ways, that we're really connected to. And so homeschooling, we learn so much. I feel like it goes both ways. Like we teach our kids, but we also learn so much in the process.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like we learn more.
Yes.
Yeah. And so like our kids, and something I've noticed with my kids is like they're very different, in the way that they learn, the things that they want to learn, their learning styles, I guess. So can you talk to us a little bit about your experience? Like what got you into homeschooling? Your experience as, a homeschooling a special needs child, and then do you have any tips to share with us?
Yeah. So honestly, I started to homeschool because I was worried about the way my kids would be treated in school, honestly, is what got me into it. I now do it for more reasons. Like I think I am really qualified to teach them and I enjoy spending time with them. And I love going on vacations on the off season, things like that. But homeschooling my kids, what's super cool about it is if they've been working really hard on learning how to like read a word or to do this math problem, you get to be the one that's there when they finally get it. You get to see their expression, you get to see their face, and you're celebrating together. Woohoo! What stinks about it is you have to be the one that's there as they're learning how to do it. Like if I have to hearing my kids learn how to spell the word, read the word the is like so, like, they're like, you're like, it's the word the, like, I can't read that anymore. But homeschooling kids with autism specifically, I think it's great for them because I think a lot of the things that they do, they would probably get in trouble for in school. Like, for instance, my son will not sit. He just will not sit down when he does school. And it's like, well, that's fine. We're at home. You can stand up if you want. That's fine. My daughter likes to chew everything. So like pencils, shoelaces, she's just chewing it as she's doing schoolwork. And so I think a lot of that works well. Plus with all of their therapies that they have to go to and stuff, homeschool really does help because it's not like I have to take them out of school to go bring them to a 2:00 therapy or whatever. We're ready to roll. But mostly I really enjoy the flexibility of homeschooling. Like if you're sending your kid to public school or private school and they're having a really tough morning, you still generally have to send them to school. You still have to say, well, all these absences and tardies are going to really count against you. I can't keep you home for the day. But with homeschooling, if one of my kids is having like a really tough day or whatever, I can be like, all right, you know what? You don't have to do the rest of it today. We'll work on this. We'll double it up tomorrow. Not a problem, Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, I don't know. I could do pluses and minuses all day about homeschool.
No, there's definitely, pros and cons. And I agree with what you said about the flexibility of it and just being able to like nurture what's going on for them in their world,
Yes.
Instead of forcing them to like snap into it or like get to it when they're not feeling it,
That's true.
A lot of that.
Yeah, we do a lot of recess, a lot of, okay, guys, go outside. You're obviously not able to focus on math right now. Or, or if there's a subject that they really like, we're able to talk about it a lot longer and go into detail about it,
And one thing that I've learned too, when I first started was that, I felt like, we had to sit down, we have to do these worksheets and it has to look like school, like what I was used to as school. But they learn so much no matter what they're doing. Like if we're making breakfast, they're learning, like how the eggs get cooked or whatever it is. Like there's so much learning going on all the time. They're always asking questions. So it doesn't always have to look like we're sitting here doing this, worksheet.
Right, exactly. Well, because you think, okay, well, that would have been home ec, like that's when you would have actually taken your hour class to learn how to make an omelet or whatever it is.
Right.
And they get to do that all day long. Or like the other day I had to refill window washer fluid in my car and all the kids were like, oh, how does that work? And I got to show them. So yeah, all day long they're learning.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay. So you mentioned a little bit finding time for yourself and that's a challenge. And I know like something that I'm passionate about is helping moms carve out that space for themselves, because when we can do that, we can nourish ourselves, even in the little ways. We're able to show up better. We're able to show up with more patience, more energy, more love for our kids.
Yes.
So here, like, what has your journey with self-care been? And what are some of your favorite ways to practice self-care?
Well, that's a good question. I, in the beginning, didn't believe in self-care. I think in the beginning, I was very focused on my whole life is for the kids. That's it. And I didn't realize like how detrimental that was to me, but it started, like my depression was getting worse and I was having terrible joint pain all the time and my anxiety was through the roof. And it wasn't until I was speaking to a therapist and she was like, when you're on a plane and they have the oxygen masks, they tell you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help your kids. And she was like, that's what you need to think about self-care about, is like that. You need to take care of yourself so that you're able to take care of your kids and you're not passed out in the plane. And
everybody when you're,
yeah. And so I was like, oh, that, like I didn't know it was that big of a deal, but also it made a lot of sense to me. So as far as, podcasting is something I really like to do. All my kids are downstairs right now watching TV so I can have my alone time. But also, like, I joined a mom's group. There's something called MOPS. Have you ever heard of MOPS before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. It's a mom's group, guys. And you can have a kid all the way through 12th grade. It doesn't matter. You could totally join it, and it's great. So those are just, like, two social things that I really like to do for myself. And then as far as things that fill me up, I don't know. Like, I really like creative stuff, I think, like artwork or playing games with my husband or even just, Netflix and chill, like just things that I like to do for myself. And I think sometimes when you're a mom, it's hard to remember what you like to do. Do you ever feel that way where you're like, I don't even know what I like?
I feel that way too when, when the kids get sick, when they have a cold or something, I'm like, let's do this. And then when I get sick, I'm like, what do I do?
Yes.
You have to kind of build that habit. And then and I even recommend like writing a list down of like your favorites so that you can even just go and look,
That's a really good idea, actually. Someone just said that to me like 2 weeks ago. I haven't done it, but that is a good idea.
Because it helps to just like, have that mental or have that list to look at. And then as you like start doing it more often, you got it, it just becomes.
Yes. Even just listening to a good song with the radios down in the car. I mean, the windows down in the car, just so you can go pick up some milk. I know that maybe for some people are like, that's not really alone time. But to me, it's like, yes, I can just jam out for a second and there's nobody in the car. You got to carve out those little tiny windows for yourself wherever you can. And it's not being selfish. It's actually being really helpful to your whole family.
Right. Yeah. And I think you mentioned like you threw yourself into motherhood. And I feel the same way. Like I didn't understand that it was a necessity. Like it was caring for my needs, and your needs need to be met so that you can survive and, and you're taking care of other people too, so that, it affects them. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think so many of us like throw ourselves into motherhood and we think that self-care is this luxury when really just taking care of ourselves in all the little ways.
Yes. I had this older mom say to me, she was like, what do you mean taking a shower is self-care and alone time? She's like, that's the stupidest thing. Does your husband shower with the children? She was like, when he takes a shower, does he consider it alone time? And I was like, oh, like I never thought of that, But as moms, we're like, well, I took a shower. So thank you, everybody and my whole family. Thank you. Like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we can own that. Like, it's okay there's so much guilt around that, taking that time for ourselves. Like like we're taking away from our kids when we do it, but we're really not, and it's also showing them like, oh, this is how I care for myself. I'm worthy of taking care of myself like mom does,
100%. You're right. And it's training them how to treat themselves and also how to let themselves be treated when they're older. You're totally right.
Yeah. So it's a gift like to you, to your whole family, to the next generation. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so you have been on this really incredible journey with so many challenges, so many blessings. If you could go back in time and just, say something, anything to your younger self, what would you tell her?
I would tell her that she is really loved, that it's going to be okay. And, and not to worry. That's what I would tell her.
Oh, yeah, I think that's so beautiful, and just something that we can probably all use that message every day. Like you're so loved, and everything's going to be okay. Thank you for sharing that.
I know. I feel like it should be like a Bob Marley song or something. Like
it's a song we could play on repeat. Like
yes, exactly. Yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for this whole conversation. Thank you for your honesty and sharing your journey. I know it really touched me, and I know like that it will, be so wonderful for so many moms to hear. And so will you share with us like where we can find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at mamasneedlove.com. My podcast is Mamas Need Love. And just like Catherine, I believe that you guys out there, you mamas, you need time for yourself and you need love. And so that's what I'm all about.
I love that so much. Okay, I'll share all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for joining me, Mama. I'm over here smiling from ear to ear and giving you a big virtual hug. I love spending this time with you. You are amazing for showing up and carving out this space to nourish your soul. If you are loving the Soul Care Mom podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if you are ready to start your mornings feeling calm and energized, get the Kickstart Your Calm Morning Guide, a self-care morning ritual for moms as a free gift when you join the Soul Care Mom community. Head over to soulcaremom.com/kickstart and enter your email address to get your free gift and start feeling like a calm mom today. Sending you so much love, Mama.